If you're a tractor owner, then you probably know how handy it is to have a logging chain for both your expected and unexpected towing tasks. The problem is most tractor brands give little thought to storage on their tractors. Sure, there's usually a small toolbox for lightweight items, but nothing big enough or strong enough for a 20-pound logging chain. Well, this is my solution to that problem.
I chose to mount my chain boxes on the front end loader towers for easy access. This keeps them low for comfortably removing the chains, and they also stay within the footprint of the tires so they don't stick out too much. Also note that I mounted them forward so they don't get in the way of getting on and off the tractor. The chain boxes are standard 50 caliber ammo cans I bought from Walmart for about $13 each. The first consideration is to make sure the chain box stands off from the loader tower enough for the lid to open without hitting the loader tower pin bushing. The pin bushing on my Kubota LA525 loader stands off slightly less than 3/4 of an inch. To make sure I mounted the boxes level with the tractor frame, I clamped a board onto the lower section of the loader mount. Then I used a speed square to make a reference line on the side of the loader tower. From there I laid out the position of the mounting studs for the first chain box. The top two studs will be 8 inches from the top of the loader tower. The right stud will be 3/4 of an inch from the back side of the loader tower, and the left stud will be 5 inches from the right one. The lower row of studs will be 5 inches below the top row, forming a 5x5 square. This line here marks where the top of the standoff block will be. Remember, these dimensions are for a Kubota LA525 loader. The dimensions will vary for other loaders. The mounting studs I used are made by Weld Mount. They are stainless steel 1/4 inch by 20 threads, 1.5 inches long, and they cost me $271 each from Downwind Marine. There's a link to them in the description. These studs are intended for use with the Weld Mount adhesive system, which is similar to the ClickBond system, but I think they're too proud of their adhesives and the proprietary tools to use them, so I'm going more old school and using JB Weld. Next, I use a stud to draw a circle around the base where each one will attach. Then I make a standoff plate template out of 3/4 inch plywood for fitting purposes. The permanent standoff plates will be made from a piece of 3/4 inch PVC board I had left over from another project. I make some reference marks for drilling the holes for the studs. Notice I mark the side for the left and right because the template will be used for making both left and right standoffs. I trim a little more off the top side of the standoff to have plenty of room for the chain box lid to close. Next I clamp the template to the side of the ammo can and drill 1/4 inch holes into the can. The ruler serves as a thin spacer between the lid and the template to ensure clearance. Now in theory the JB Weld should be plenty strong with just the surface area of the studs, which are 1.25 inch diameter. But I'm not taking any chances, so I fabricate some steel plates to connect vertically between the top and bottom studs to greatly increase the surface area for the JB Weld. They are made from some scrap 1 by 1/8 inch thick steel bar stock I had. First I drill the holes for the studs to go through. Next I use a rotary grinder to grind away enough material so that the stud backs are flush with the bar surface and remove the paint from the back side of the bar. I won't need the handle on the ammo can, so off it comes. A couple of channel lock pliers makes this easy. Next, I make the permanent standoff blocks out of PVC board using the template. I rip the PVC boards down to the proper width on the table saw, again using the template as a guide. Now it's time to drill the holes in the standoffs with some help from the template. Gotta get that paint off the loader tower for good adhesion. First I try the rotary grinder, but it's a little too aggressive and not very precise. Next I try my multi-tool with a sanding pad, but it's not very effective. Then I tried my Dremel tool with a right angle attachment and metal cutting disc, and it was just right. Here's a closer look at how the pieces fit together. You can see how the backs of the studs sit more or less flush with the back of the steel strips, and that there is generous surface area for the JB Weld to do its magic. Before mixing the adhesive, I put a piece of sheet plastic between the studs and strips and the standoff block to keep any stray JB Weld from sticking to the standoff block. I cleaned the metal surfaces with acetone for best adhesion. Remember that this has got to hold the chain boxes and 20 pounds of chain while riding over rough terrain, so I want to give this the best shot of holding as possible. The JB Weld I'm using is the original version. Like most epoxies, it takes an equal amount of adhesive and hardener mixed together thoroughly for the magic to happen. A nail makes an excellent mixer and applicator. I mixed the white and black together until I had a lovely gray goop. Next, I spread it onto the stud backs and metal strips. And then on the loader tower. It's time to stick it on. Notice that I use clamps below the standoff blocks to keep it from oozing down before the epoxy sets up. I make sure the top of the block lines up with my reference line and then clamp it in place. Here's a close-up of the clamp setup from different angles. Now I have to wait for 24 hours for full strength to set up. Well, it's been over 24 hours, so it's time to see what we've got. I'll be very encouraged if the thing doesn't fall off as soon as I take the clamps off. It'll have passed test number 1. Alright, so far so good. Now I'm going to try to get this plate off. Needs a little encouragement with a pry bar. No longer need the plastic. Just for the moment, I want to test fit getting the box on there. Let's see if this goes back on any easier than it came off. Yeah. Now to keep moisture from getting inside the box itself, I made these little rubber washers out of a pond liner. Rubber pond liner we had left over. You'll see this featured in a lot of projects. Mine nothing like having some scraps of pond liner around. Looks like I need to ream the holes out a bit. Okay. I can live with that. Make sure we've got clearances on the lid. Yes. Next up, we put on our fender washers and our Nylock nuts. The fender washers are important for strength in distributing the load. I recommend using Nylock nuts, but you could use regular nuts and lock washers. Now that we've got it bolted up, we'll cut the bolts flush with the nuts. We'll round off the bolt heads to make sure they don't rip my hands up. I vacuum out the box to get the metal filings out. Next up, we're going to put the chain in it and let it sit overnight. And if it's in the morning, if it's not on the ground, then we'll take it out for a test drive. On the bottom is going to be this foam material, which is going to act as suspension. It's not to make the chain comfy, it's to make the box comfy. This top layer is a scrap section from the gym floor material that we have in our gym that goes in here. It is to help cut down on noise and distribute the weight of the chain across the foam so that it actually hopefully does some good. Put the lid back on it. And we're going to hope that tomorrow this thing is still right where we put it. Then we'll take it for field testing. And indeed, it did survive the night and the field test. So, it's time for paint. The first coat will be a cheaper Rust-Oleum orange paint, and we'll get the can into the general color family, followed by a couple of coats of official Kubota orange. After the paint is dry, I take the tape off and put it back together. Time to paint the bare metal on the loader tower. I begin by masking off the area and cleaning my marks off with rubbing alcohol. Then applying a couple of coats of Kubota orange. The next day, it's time for assembly. Some gentle persuasion with a rubber mallet gets the standoff block seated firmly. Then the rubber washers made from pond liner go on next, followed by the chain box. Then the suspension pads, the lid, and then the chain. I used this first one for about 3 months of rough terrain, warm and bitter cold weather before being confident enough to add the right side chain box. So proper symmetry has been restored to my tractor, and both chain boxes are living happily ever after, so far. If you enjoy these videos, please help me keep them coming by clicking the like button, commenting below, and subscribing. Thanks for watching.